Daniel and Clara seemed like the perfect newlyweds, meeting on a dating app and marrying within months. But just 1 week after their wedding, their dream honeymoon in the Philippines unraveled into a nightmare. When Daniel uncovered Clara's shocking secret, she had been born a man. What began as a story of love and new beginnings ended in betrayal, rage, and death. Daniel had always been the type of man who placed work above everything else. In his early 40s, he had built a successful business, traveled widely for deals, and spent countless nights alone in hotel rooms. Years he had told himself he didn't need anyone, but deep inside, the emptiness grew. Friends settled down, built families, and filled their social media feeds with photos of weddings and children. Daniel, meanwhile, found himself scrolling through dating apps late at night, searching for a connection he never admitted he desperately wanted. It was during one of these searches that he came across Clara. Her profile seemed almost too perfect. A striking smile, refined taste, and the promise of adventure were worded with confidence, her words direct but warm, giving Daniel a sense of comfort that was rare for him. What began as light conversations quickly grew into long nightly exchanges. Clara always seemed to know what to say, when to listen, and how to ease the heaviness Daniel carried. Within weeks, their chats shifted to video calls, where Clara appeared polished and elegant. Daniel was captivated by her charm and the way she seemed to fit seamlessly into the life he had envisioned for himself. To him, it felt like fate, the answer to years of loneliness, and he wasn't willing to let it slip away. As months passed, their relationship accelerated. Clara told Daniel she longed for stability and a partner who understood her. Daniel, tired of empty flings and shallow connections, felt she was exactly what he had been missing. The idea of marriage, something he had resisted for years, suddenly seemed like the most natural step. Friends and relatives, surprised at his sudden seriousness, questioned if he truly knew the woman he was about to marry. But Daniel, carried by emotion and blinded by the excitement of new love, brushed aside their concerns. He insisted that love was about trust and faith, and he was determined to follow his heart. The wedding itself was a quiet affair. Daniel wanted intimacy, choosing to invite only a few close relatives. Clara looked radiant in her gown, calm and composed throughout the ceremony. Daniel felt proud, convinced he had found the woman who would bring balance to his life. For him, it was not just a union, but a declaration to the world that he had finally broken free from loneliness. The celebration was brief, almost rushed, as both of them seemed eager to begin their honeymoon. They chose the Philippines for their getaway, drawn by the promise of white sand beaches, turquoise waters, and secluded resorts. Daniel had always wanted a place where he could disconnect from the demands of business and savor the start of his marriage. Clara, for her part, appeared equally thrilled, reminding him that a honeymoon was the perfect chance to strengthen their bond. Boarding the flight together, Daniel felt a sense of triumph. As the plane lifted off, he thought of how quickly his life had changed, from solitary nights to holding hands with his new wife as they looked toward the horizon. He could not have known then that beneath Clara's polished exterior was a truth that would undo everything he believed, a truth waiting like a shadow just beyond the light of his newfound happiness. The first few days in the Philippines were everything Daniel had hoped for. The resort was perched on the edge of turquoise waters, surrounded by palm trees that swayed in the humid breeze. Their villa was secluded, with its own pool, offering privacy and luxury in equal measure. Daniel believed this was the start of a new life, a chance to leave behind the years of emptiness. He walked along the beach with Clara, dined with her under candlelight, and swam in the ocean. Convincing himself he had made the right choice, outwardly the couple looked like newlyweds lost in paradise. But as the days passed, small cracks began to appear in the illusion. Daniel noticed that Clara kept her luggage locked, even inside their private suite. While he unpacked his clothes freely, Clara seemed hesitant, always checking to ensure her belongings were untouched. When he asked casual questions about her past, her answers were vague, as though rehearsed. She deflected conversations about her family, and when pressed, she would change the subject with a smile that appeared practiced rather than genuine. Daniel, though unsettled, pushed his doubts aside, told himself it was nothing more than nerves or shyness. Yet a growing unease took root, gnawing at the back of his mind. The shift came one evening when Clara stepped into the bathroom to shower. Daniel, restless and unable to sleep, noticed her handbag sitting on the dresser, slightly open. A thin stack of papers peeked out, as if carelessly tucked away. Hesitated at first, telling himself it was wrong to pry, but the curiosity proved too strong. He slid the documents free, expecting travel details or receipts. Instead, what he found made his breath stop cold. The papers were official records, detailing a life that Clara had never mentioned. On the birth certificate, the name was different, and the gender listed was male. The room seemed to tilt as Daniel scanned the pages again and again, hoping he had misread them. His chest tightened with disbelief. The woman he had married, the partner he had so proudly introduced as his wife, had been born a man. The realization sent a wave of anger and humiliation crashing through him. His mind raced back to every detail of their relationship, her careful avoidance of intimacy before marriage, her reluctance to speak about her past, the way she had kept her belongings under lock and key. It all suddenly made sense, and the truth struck like a cruel betrayal. When Clara emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a robe, Daniel quickly shoved the papers back into her bag. He sat in silence, staring at the floor, his heart pounding. She seemed unaware, humming softly as she dried her hair. Daniel, however, could no longer see her the same way. He felt deceived, his trust shattered beyond repair. From that moment, the paradise around him faded. The warm sand and clear skies no longer brought him peace. Every smile Clara offered felt like a mask, and every word she spoke seemed hollow. He withdrew into himself, unable to confront her directly, but unable to forget what he had discovered. The honeymoon that began as a dream now carried a shadow too heavy to ignore. And with each passing hour, the tension between them deepened into something darker. Daniel's discovery clung to him like a weight he couldn't shake. The truth he had uncovered left him restless, pacing the villa at night while Clara slept. He replayed every moment of their relationship in his mind, searching for signs he had missed, wondering how he could have been so blind. What once felt like certainty now filled him with doubt and shame. He thought of his family, his friends, the business associates who had praised him for finally settling down. The thought of them discovering the truth burned him with humiliation. Instead of joy, he felt trapped, cornered by a secret that seemed too unbearable to carry. But outwardly, Clara maintained composure. She smiled when they were in public, posed for photos, and treated resort staff with warmth. Two strangers, they still looked like a couple in love, enjoying their honeymoon. But Daniel's demeanor told a different story. He became withdrawn, his meals left half-eaten, his eyes fixed on distant points rather than on his wife. Resort staff noticed his silence at dinners, the way he avoided eye contact, and how he often left Clara sitting alone at the table. He no longer touched her hand or leaned close when she spoke. What had begun as a glowing display of affection was now marked by cold distance. Surveillance cameras later showed Daniel wandering through the hallways late at night, barefoot and uneasy, his expression tense. He appeared lost in thought, clutching his phone but never making a call. The resort staff whispered among themselves about the sudden change, speculating that the couple had fallen into an argument. None could have guessed the depth of the secret lodged between them. By the 5th day of their honeymoon, the tension was undeniable. Clara seemed to sense the shift, her posture stiffer, her smile thinner. She appeared to be trying harder, ordering elaborate meals, suggesting excursions, and coaxing Daniel to join her in activities he once looked forward to. But he refused, choosing instead to stay in the villa or walk the beach alone. To Daniel, every gesture she made felt like manipulation, a desperate attempt to cover the truth he could no longer ignore. On the 6th day, matters escalated. Witnesses recalled seeing the couple walking near the shoreline in the late afternoon. Daniel's face was flushed, his body stiff, while Clara gestured with her hands as though trying to explain or calm him. Though no one heard the words exchanged, their body language spoke volumes. Clara's attempts at reassurance were met with clenched fists and sharp movements from Daniel, his frustration barely contained. Tourists passing by slowed their pace, sensing the volatility of the moment. Some later described the scene as one of mounting aggression, a storm gathering just before it broke. By evening, the distance between them had grown into a visible rift. Daniel isolated himself in the villa, leaving Clara to dine alone. Resort staff, now concerned, noted how Clara's eyes appeared tired, her expression dimmed with worry. She carried herself with poise, but beneath it, there was a fragility, as if she knew the situation was spiraling out of her control. The paradise that once seemed to promise a fresh beginning was now suffocating, its beauty mocking the chaos festering inside the villa. Every wave that crashed against the shore seemed to echo Daniel's growing rage. The honeymoon had become a prison, and both of them were trapped inside a truth that could not be hidden, a truth that was pushing them closer to an inevitable breaking point. On the seventh day, the atmosphere inside the villa felt heavier than ever before. The soft sound of the waves outside contrasted sharply with the tension filling the rooms. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the dull hum of the ceiling fan. Daniel had spent most of the morning pacing, his mind clouded with anger, betrayal, and fear of humiliation. Clara, sensing his mood, tried to keep herself busy, flipping through a book she never really read, and occasionally glancing at him with wary eyes. Neither spoke much, but both seemed to know that the fragile balance between them was close to collapse. By midday, staff delivering lunch to the villa noticed the strained air. Plates of fresh seafood and tropical fruit were left untouched, and Daniel barely acknowledged their presence. Clara forced a polite smile to the staff before they left, but as soon as the door closed, the mask fell. She sat motionless, her hands clenched together, while Daniel stood by the window, staring at the ocean as if it held answers to his torment. The confrontation began quietly, with sharp movements and muffled sounds echoing from inside. Later, investigators would piece together the struggle from the evidence left behind. A glass shattered against the floor, its fragments scattered across the tiles. Furniture shifted violently, one chair tipped over, and a lamp crashed to the ground. Neighbors in the adjoining villas reported hearing thuds and the sound of raised voices, though the words were indistinct. The storm Daniel had been holding inside had finally erupted. When the struggle ended, the villa was in disarray. Clara lay unresponsive, her body marked by the violence of the encounter. The robe she had been wearing earlier was torn. Her surroundings told the story of desperation: an overturned table, smeared streaks on the floor, and signs of a frantic attempt to defend herself. The life that had seemed so carefully composed was extinguished in a burst of rage. Hours passed before anyone entered the villa. Staff became concerned when the couple failed to appear for their evening reservation at the resort's restaurant. A knock at the door went unanswered. After repeated attempts, management used a spare key to check inside. What they found froze them in shock. Clara's body was discovered on the floor, lifeless, while the villa bore clear evidence of violence. Daniel was nowhere to be seen. Panic spread through the resort as authorities were contacted immediately, and word of the tragedy quickly reached local police. Investigators arrived to secure the scene, photographing the shattered glass, the bloodstains, and the signs of a bitter fight. They gathered documents, luggage, and Clara's personal belongings. Uncovering the same records Daniel had discovered days earlier, the secret at the center of the relationship was now exposed, not only to Daniel, but to the authorities who would soon piece together the motive. It did not take long to locate Daniel. Later that evening, he was found wandering along the shoreline, disoriented. His clothes damp with seawater and sand clinging to his feet. He did not resist when officers approached him, showing little emotion except for the blank look in his eyes. Taken into custody, he spoke in fragments, offering only broken phrases about betrayal and anger. The honeymoon that had begun with promise had ended in death. The villa, once a place of intimacy and luxury, was now a crime scene sealed with yellow tape. The resort, known for its beauty, became the backdrop of a story that would soon circle the globe, a story of secrets, rage, and a love that transformed into violence within the span of a single week. The investigation moved quickly, drawing attention from both local authorities and international media. Within hours of Daniel's arrest, news outlets had already begun reporting on the shocking case. The story of a newlywed honeymoon ending in death spread across headlines, amplified by the sensational discovery of Clara's hidden past. What had been a private tragedy became a global spectacle, with every detail dissected and debated. Forensic teams combed through the villa, collecting fingerprints, photographs, and broken fragments of glass. The medical examiner confirmed Clara had suffered multiple injuries consistent with a violent struggle. The documents found in her luggage were presented as crucial evidence, showing the life she had kept from Daniel. Investigators traced her history, learning that she had transitioned years earlier, building a new identity she believed would give her the future she wanted. Those who had known her described her as independent and determined, though private about her past. To the police, the records revealed motive: Daniel's discovery of Clara's identity and the eruption of rage that followed. Back in his cell, Daniel remained withdrawn, speaking little to officers. Reports described him as sleepless, his demeanor alternating between numb silence and bursts of agitation. When formal questioning began, he admitted to a confrontation, but insisted it had not been premeditated. He described feeling deceived, humiliated, and unable to control his emotions in the moment. His defense would later lean heavily on claims of emotional shock, portraying him as a man blindsided by betrayal. The trial, when it began, was closely followed around the world. Prosecutors painted Daniel as a man consumed by pride and anger, arguing that his violence was a deliberate choice. They emphasized the brutality of the attack and Clara's attempts to defend herself. The defense countered by presenting Daniel as a victim of deception, overwhelmed by the revelation and driven into a state of temporary madness. Witnesses, including resort staff and guests, testified about the couple's shifting behavior, recalling the growing distance, the late-night pacing, and the heated argument on the beach. Their words helped piece together the slow unraveling that culminated in Clara's death. Public opinion was deeply divided. Some sympathized with Daniel, claiming Clara's secrecy had created a dangerous foundation for their marriage. Others condemned Daniel's actions, pointing out that no secret justified violence and that Clara's life had been stolen in a brutal, unforgivable way. Online debates raged, with the case sparking discussions about identity, honesty, and prejudice. Each day of the trial brought new commentary, turning a courtroom tragedy into a cultural flashpoint. In the end, the court delivered its verdict. Daniel was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. The judge described the act as a crime born of rage and pride, a decision that had destroyed 2 lives and scarred the families left behind. Clara's relatives mourned quietly, their grief magnified by the public spotlight. Daniel's family, too, grappled with shame, struggling to reconcile the man they knew with the man portrayed in court. The Philippine resort, once a place of beauty, carried the stain of tragedy long after the trial ended. Tourists avoided the villa where the crime had taken place. Staff whispered about the honeymoon that turned into horror. For many, the story became a chilling reminder of how quickly love can curdle into violence, how secrets, once revealed, can unleash consequences no one can control. The marriage that had begun with hope and celebration was reduced to ashes in just 1 week. Remembered not for vows or romance, but for betrayal, rage, and death.